That's the good stuff right here. Hard, soft literature. Yeah. I mean, sort of, kind of. I tell you what, I'll check it out. You know, I'm not normally one to destroy books, but so I'm just kind of baked for it. Hiya, folks. Fruit and Doggy here, and I am discussing the book, "The I Hate Republicans" reader. Now, conventional wisdom says not to talk about politics and religion, so I mean, I can't avoid that clearly to all extents, and so I think for the interest of complete self-disclosure, I will mention that my own personal politics, I would say that overall I am more of a Republican than a Democrat, but I don't hold strictly to party line issues on every issue, or on every matter and subject. And I'm just clearing the air a little bit on that. I will mention that with this book, it's actually a compilation of many different writings. Seems like it's maybe taking chapters or several pages from maybe essays, books, novels, so on and so forth. The copyright is 2003, at least when the compilation in this collection and book was published. As far as each individual writing and work that was compiled into here, they would have been written before that. Excuse me. And so, just to mention, this was written to cover the Bush presidency. And I will mention as well, back in the 2000s, when Bush was president, I would have been going through middle school and high school. And frankly, with the different issues going on with my life at the time, I was too focused on dealing with my own issues. I wasn't really that interested in politics. I wasn't that engaged. I wasn't paying attention. Wasn't, drinking up all of the news and highly engaged with the news and politics of the day. And looking back, excuse me, I think it's difficult to necessarily look back on events without a pretty heavy filter. So excuse me, I might have grown up, I was alive, grew up through that time, but frankly I don't really know everything that was going on at the time. I don't know I remember the big issues, like with the Bush Gore Florida vote issue. But anyways, this book, starting off on a positive, it does break things up into subjects, which is kind of handy. I just read it, straight cover to cover, but well, it's kind of funny that contents and how it breaks it up: secrets and lies, dirty tricks, compassionate conservatives, fat cats and corporate welfare, hate, incompetence, nature lovers, Big Brother, American Empire, and then it even just has an "in more" section. I guess stuff that falls outside of those other categories. But I suppose the positive thing, or one way to look at this, is this would be a good way to kind of cast out the net, get a wide variety of authors, of different perspectives, find somebody you might have liked, wanted to read more of their work. Excuse me, I hate this cough. So that is very handy, and I would give kudos to that. And I will say, kind of the main negative of this compilation, it's pretty apparent from the title itself, "I Hate Republicans." The tone, it's a very consistent tone throughout for the most part, even though it's compositions by a wide range of authors. The tone is over the top. It it's so, how to put it, it's just so skewed and nasty, I suppose is the best way to put it. It takes such a, it really has a very condescending attitude as well. And the expression "you catch more flies with honey than vinegar" comes to mind here, because I would say again that I am more of a Republican than not. However, I don't necessarily fall on that side every single issue, every single situation, 100%, no questions. For instance, the section I thought had the most likelihood of maybe having some accuracies, having some issues I'd agree with, was when it talked about the environmental issues. When it discussed how under Bush's presidency, he was breaking down the limitations in place, the regulations, that he was deregulating and weakening the EPA to such an extent that it raises questions about our the safety of citizens, our health and our well-being at the expense of corporate profits. And I'm not okay with a couple of companies and a handful of executives making a huge profit on the backs of everybody else's health, at the expense of everybody else's health, and they can insulate themselves from that because of their wealth. They can live in the good neighborhoods, the safe areas, far removed from any problems they've caused for themselves. Excuse me. However, I would say that most of the book, a lot of the issues that they were discussing, I had to ask myself what reality or what part of the world were they living in where they experienced life that way, where they were seeing things the way they did, because it just didn't seem accurate or realistic. It's one of those aspects where, again, I'll admit that looking backwards in time, especially from as far as fairly recent events, it does skew pretty quickly. I think there is a pretty strong filter, but I don't think the contents of this books have I don't think the contents of this book have aged incredibly well. And I'll give an example. Excuse me. Let me drink something real fast. Pardon. Train of thought. The part that one of the parts that didn't age well to me was with regards to the claim that the mainstream media under Bush was very strict, very strongly conservative and Republican, that the mainstream media and the news casters and reporters, journalists, were just in the pocket of Bush, unquestionably. Now, I think after post 9/11, for at least several months, I would acknowledge that Bush probably did get treated with kid gloves for a while, but at that point, our nation and everybody in it, we were reeling. An attack like that, an attack of that nature was unprecedented in this country. We didn't know what to make of it. And so we needed time to heal, recover, and I hate to say it, but it really was a unifying event. People put aside their differences trying to band together and work together for a while. But to think that the media was, just 100% pro-Bush in all ways, that is ridiculous to me, because even as disinterested in the news as I was, I remember, excuse me, very vividly hearing it on the news all the time. They routinely tore into Bush. They tore him apart from, everything, all the small stuff with his gaffes, his Bushisms. They even had a term for it. And I'll admit, he definitely said a lot of silly or funny or goofy things. I don't know. I just don't think he was an incredibly articulate person as far as giving regular discourse, regular presentations, newscasts, and so forth. I think he just really struggled with that. That wasn't his strength. But yeah, they tore him apart for that. And I wasn't alive during Vietnam, but it sort of, in some ways, I think the media was treating the Bush presidency the same way that it seems like the Vietnam War was being treated. Everybody was against it. And it wasn't, in this case, they weren't at least attacking the soldiers who were just following orders and going to the ground forces like they were supposed to. They were fulfilling their duty. With our troops going to the Middle East, we were more supportive of them, but you know, the war effort was seen as completely unnecessary. What are we doing? Let's get out of here. Just undermined it. It seemed like in every sense. I don't know. That's my interpretation of things. It just seems so drastically different to how these various authors looked back at this. And another segment that was particularly noteworthy because of its tone, its absolute hatred. It was. Let me see if I can find it really quickly. I don't. You'll have to bear with me. Gosh darn it, stupid cough. I'm assuming it's going to be under hate, so I'm going to peek there real fast and see if I. Oh, no, it wasn't there. Basically, there was a section in here that was talking about Nixon, and it was after his death, and this author went after Nixon. Again, that's far before my time, but they went after Nixon with such hatred. It was completely ridiculous. And I don't even know why you would include that in here. It's like, well, yeah, it definitely fits, but if you're at all trying to, well, I guess I shouldn't even say that. A title like this, you're not even trying to write something that would engage people from the other side, that would make them think, that might lead them to reconsider their positions, to reconsider their perspectives, their point of view. You've already pitched this in such a way that they would never even give you the chance. They would never read it. I'm not like that. I tend to read books that in theory would be very confrontational towards me, just to see what they have to say. And in the vast majority of the time, it's nothing. It's sadly usually not very engaging or interesting, but it's especially not. It's not compelling. It's not. Man, these are such salient points, ideas, concepts, perspectives. I mean, how could you not reevaluate your entire point of view and consider going to the other direction? Now, again, I'll give them some benefit of the doubt. I'll give them some credit that I think with the environmental issues, they might be a little bit more accurate. They might be more on the money. I'm willing to give them more consideration there. But otherwise, the vast majority of the book I thought was just very vitriolic, very, I guess I've already said it at this point. You know, the tone, the attitude, you know, just completely over the top and dismissive, which I just don't see any point to that, truthfully. I guess it's okay at points you want to rally the wagons, you want to rally the troops. That's the phrase I was trying to come up with. Sans the caffeine. But I don't know. I just don't think that this tone is necessarily great preaching to the choir. I would think I don't know. I'm going on a tangent. I'm rambling at this point. And I will admit completely that with politics, books about politics don't tend to age incredibly well. They just run out of... what's the word? They don't stay contemporary very long. They don't stay meaningful or relevant to the situation incredibly long. And so even though this is only 16 years old, 16 plus depending on which section and compilation, or contribution I should say, but yeah, I would think that even if you're strongly on the left, that if nothing else, the age I don't think would be incredibly relevant. I think there'd probably be better works that would cover this era, these different situations and subjects more completely, with better grace and so on. I forgot to mention earlier, this is a decently sized book, about 415 pages, and it's also nice because they are made up of a lot of smaller contributions. Each section could be read pretty quickly, I'll give it that, but otherwise, unless you're one of those people who are like me who don't mind stirring up the hornet's nest, looking into how things are being discussed on the other side, sometimes just for a laugh, I just don't think this book would be incredibly meaningful to most people. But otherwise, that's going to be all. I could see this being maybe a borrow for a small niche of people. I don't think this is dangerous enough, even controversial enough to necessarily be a burn it. But then again, it's also not incredibly useful or meaningful, so I could see it falling into that territory pretty easily, to be entirely honest. But anyways, that's been everything. I hope you enjoyed this book discussion. Have a good one, folks. Hopefully you're not coughing up a storm like I am. Bye.